From the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and we're delighted you've chosen to join us once again for this crazy whirlwind tour around stories that have caught our interest today. Those of you who are brand new to PID Radio, welcome. All are welcome, so to speak, and not in that, sort of movie way. But we welcome all of you, especially in the name of Christ. If you are wondering what the PID stands for, it's Peering into Darkness, because we look at the supernatural things going on behind the big headlines. But before we get to any of that, please download our app.
Yes, that gets you all of our content, video and audio, and the archives. Some
Country
of the classic, yes, country and Western. Going back to 2005, we're coming up on 20 years of this podcast.
Oh, I feel older by the minute.
And we've got podcast episodes in the app going back to 2005. It's available for iOS, Android, and Amazon Kindle Fire phones and tablets. We've also got versions for Roku, Apple TV, and now Fire TV. That's finally available. So if you've got a smart TV or a set-top box, please install the app to your big screen for the video content. But
big screen, small screen.
Yeah, but the mobile version has a neat feature with messaging where you can join in the conversations and ask questions of us. And each week we do our best to answer one or two questions per program. Because
honestly, my answers in particular take more than my one little finger typing on a phone screen want to do. So I like answering them this way. The other thing is, if you download the app, you can binge on all sorts of stuff. You can spend weeks. You'll get lost in the archives. We'll never see you again. Take snacks when you go, because we want to let you know that this weekend's PID Radio and tomorrow's fellowship, Gilbert House Fellowship, will be the last new ones, perhaps for the rest of the year. And the reason we say that is because Derek goes in for his aneurysm surgery on the 8th of November. The recovery time from this is anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. It depends upon the person and exactly what has to be done. So we're giving Derek, just giving you heads up. It may be through the holidays. So we may not be back until January. Your birthday's in January.
That is true. So
maybe not until after your birthday. Or maybe come back to celebrate your birthday.
Well,
which, by the way, is on January 5th. In case you're wondering, it is January 5th. Well, yeah, so we really don't. We don't aspire to taking that much time off, because Derek and I are both, even though we call ourselves slugs, we really love working for the Lord. We love looking and seeing what's going on and writing and recording podcasts, but he does need lots of downtime to fully recover. So we want him to fully recover. And those of you who've been praying, thank you. Thank you.
Amen to that. Amen. Yeah, we won't really know how the recovery's going until we get there.
We'll update you on the app.
Oh, yeah. We will post notes in the announcements from the Gilbert's section. But please, when you're in there, jump in on the questions for Derek, questions for Sharon section, and each program has got its own little forum.
Please.
So, you'll get that at gilberthouse.org, gilberthouse.org/app.
Well, do you know what I learned this morning?
What's that?
I have someone that I follow on X who is a very conservative gentleman who moved from the UK. His name is not Colin Robinson, but I always want to call him that. Calvin Robinson.
Yes.
He moved from the UK to Michigan, believe it or not. He is a pastor. He was a vicar over in the C of E, but a very conservative branch that had sort of started its own less liberal Church of England. And he finally just had enough of England, the way that country is going. Yeah. He's over here and he's warning, he's sounding the bell that it's going to go that way here. And I'm thinking, Calvin, you may be leaving the U.S. soon if we don't get things straightened out. But he was posting about a holiday that's celebrated over in the UK, even in the Church of England. It's got a long history. It's called All Souls Day. And many of you may know what we're talking about, but I've learned a little bit about it this morning.
Well, that's very interesting. Again, the Halloween was just a couple of days ago, and that's followed by All Saints Day. But I was not really familiar with All Souls Day.
This sort of Halloween, which is All Hallows Eve.
Samhain.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. That whole 3-4 day period is sometimes called Solmus or Hallowmas.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's today, being the 2nd of November, is celebrated as Soul Day by many denominations, not only in the West, but also elsewhere in the world, in the East.
Orthodox churches.
Orthodox, yes, indeed. And it is a day when, and Derek and I don't believe in this, but it's a day when those who follow it with the idea behind its origination, you're praying your loved ones out of purgatory.
Yeah, that's not a thing.
That's not a thing.
Purgatory's not biblical.
No. Now, let me tell you what I discovered this morning. I talked to Derek about it this morning, so he's not going to be shocked. But the way you celebrate All Souls Day, historically, going back centuries, is that you go from door to door. This is going to sound very familiar. And many times it's children who go door to door, sometimes in disguise. And they will carry, and I'm not joking, carved out, hollowed out turnips with a little candle inside.
Nice to know turnips are good for something.
Yeah, finally. They're hollowed out and they have a light inside, a little candle. And the child would carry them from house to house. Now, it wasn't like today where there were street lights all over the place. It was dark.
Sure.
So they were going from house to house singing songs for the souls, singing for souls, singing soothing music, bringing the light that represented the soul in purgatory.
Oh.
So they would arrive at your home, and prior to this day, you would have, if you were a wonderful woman in the home, you would bake lots and lots of soul cakes.
Oh, okay.
And you would provide libation to go along with it, a drink of some kind, perhaps, apple cider. But it would be made from things that you just harvested or you had plenty of. So the cakes would be made from the grains that you just harvested, be it rye or whatever, and then you would put in yeast or just let the natural yeast fermentation, or you would put in beer of some kind or ale to ferment it, and then you would put in dried raisins or currants, or you would put in nuts of various kinds. Even if you had to go out and forage to make this relatively small cake, so 3 inches across maybe, and then you would mark the top with a cross to represent Christ. Now, if you have been following our work for a while, read our books, or been listening to us, then all of this is ringing a bell.
It should anyway, yeah. This is very similar to the ancient practice of the Amorites called kispum.
Yes.
Where you would summon the spirits of your ancestors
usually
by
in the
name.
Spring or in the fall.
Well, there was 1 month a year where there was a special festival for that, and that was usually in the summertime. And I'm forgetting the name of the month in the Babylonian calendar, but there was I think it was Abi, the month of Abi.
Fathers.
Exactly. Yeah, that word still means the fathers. In Arabic, it's Abu. In Hebrew, it'd be Avi. So the month of the ancestors, where the entire month was devoted to this practice.
So Avi Lipkin.
Yes, exactly.
I know, that's what his name means.
Right. So it's a very ancient practice that the Amorites would practice it once a month on the night of no moon, which is the night before the night of the new moon, where you see the first sliver of the moon. Even back, 4,000 years ago, apparently they believed that on the night when there was no moon, the veil between the worlds was thinnest. But the month of Avi, they would have bigger rituals that would, the entire month was, and the same thing was true in the Roman festival calendar. There was a, what was it called? Paternalia?
There's a Paternalia.
Paternalia was usually around.
Fathers.
That was around the month of February, if I remember correctly. Judd Burton talked about this recently.
Could be especially if it coincides with Feberalia.
Yeah.
So mid-February.
Anyway,
the Ides of February, so to speak.
But again, the bottom line is this: there was it's Parentalia.
Oh,
Parentalia.
Okay.
Yeah. Beginning on 13 February. So 9-day festival held in honor of the family ancestors.
It does coincide with Feberalia.
Right. bottom line is that this was an ancient practice that moved from Mesopotamia westward to the Greeks and then the Romans. This idea that you had to summon your ancestors by name and then hold a ritual feast at which they were fed, in air quotes, because the dead don't actually feed on anything, but they would be served bread. In the kispum ritual of the Amorites, they would be served bread. This is what the teraphim were used for. The little household gods that Jacob's wife Rachel stole from her father Laban. You'd use the little statues to smear bread on the faces, and that was how you fed your ancestors. Then you pour out a drink offering.
And if you didn't have those, you couldn't do it, and your ancestors got mad, and they came back to haunt you.
Exactly.
That's the story. We don't believe that, but
no.
That's what was believed back then.
Right. And this practice of summoning the ancestors to a ritual meal continued in the early Christian church. We wrote in our book Veneration, and this was a surprise stumbling across this bit of research, that archaeologists have discovered that was the reason the earliest Christian churches in Rome, after Emperor Constantine in the early 4th century, legalized the Christian faith. After he became emperor, the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, where he saw the flaming cross in the sky and heard a voice saying, "In this sign conquer." At least that was the story he told.
Yeah.
That the earliest churches in Rome were built in cemeteries so that the Christians could continue the practice. So 2 centuries later, Augustine said, we really shouldn't be doing this, but because they won't stop, let's Christianize the practice and say that, hey, the saints can intercede for us. So let's, we can pray to the saints and they can intercede for us. But this practice was just Christianized form of the veneration of the Rephaim, the spirits of the giants destroyed in flood, demons.
Yeah, I've said this before, but it really brings a whole new light. And of course, what's in your heart is everything.
Right.
But when I was a kid and we go to vacation Bible school, most churches have a cemetery right next to a graveyard, right next to the church. And we would take our, cookies and Kool-Aid, and we'd go and sit out on the tombstones, and just I'd sit there because my legs wouldn't touch the ground, so I'd just sit there kicking my little shoes and eating my cookies, my chocolate chip cookies, drinking my grape Kool-Aid, and thinking nothing about it. But that idea in the 19th century, because there were early 19th century, there were no public parks in London, so the Sunday afternoon would be spent in a graveyard.
Yeah.
Probably outside of town because there weren't that many in town yet. That became a thing later. But you would go and you take your picnic lunch and sit around.
Big patch of grass, right?
Big patch of grass, exactly. Well, the idea of soul cakes, it was not just going and singing and getting a reward. It sounds like Halloween, doesn't it? And it also sounds a bit like caroling at Christmas.
Kind of does.
We would do that as kids, and we'd go and we'd sing to the shut-ins, and they'd always give us some candy or cakes or whatever, and a little, something to drink, usually apple cider or milk. But one of the other traditions in England, at least, and I do a lot of this research for the Red Wing Saga, is that adults would accompany the kids, and you could say it's to keep the kids safe. And it may have been, but oftentimes these adults would go, their drink would be a little fermented, and the adults would go in disguise, and they would oftentimes have at least one man who had a horse's skull on his head, and he wore a sheet around his shoulders.
Okay.
Now, historically in England and in parts of Rome, there was a veneration of Epona. That was the name of a horse goddess. But that also goes back to the Viking invasion when Horsa and Hengist came in. And the Vikings venerated horses as well because there was a lot of strength in horses. And a horse, if you sacrificed a horse, that was a big deal. It was like in the Middle East when you sacrificed a donkey.
Right.
That was like sacrificing a Cadillac.
Yeah.
A Cadillac truck.
Donkeys were used for the caravans long before camels were domesticated.
You made your living as a businessman with that donkey.
Right.
But if you rode a horse...
It was like an F-250.
Yeah. Yeah, very much like Econoline. If you had horses, it probably meant that you were way upper class and you were a warrior, because a horse was a machine of war, especially in parts. Right. They wouldn't be like thoroughbreds. These would be big horses that could take long journeys, either just walking between battle to battle, but also bringing some bulk to the matter. If you've ever seen the airs above the ground from the Lipizzaner stallions, those are more modern versions of that ancient idea of a horse tank, so to speak. But these horses not only come charging at you, they'll kick you right off the field without a blink of an eye. But yes, this idea of wearing a horse skull was invoking some sort of deity. There is some creepy stuff about this day.
Yeah, we start looking at it and thinking about, okay, why do we do that? What's the reasons behind it? And this may not be in your mind, and probably wasn't.
And it's what's in your heart.
Sure, yeah. You cannot accidentally worship a pagan deity.
Exactly.
So this idea that just because you put up a Christmas tree, you're suddenly worshiping Baal or Nimrod or something, that's silly. God knows what's in your heart. But the origins of these rituals, it's like when you start kind of turning over those leaves, it's like, oh, well, maybe if that's what the origin here, maybe we should do something different.
Do you know, speaking of the teraphim and worshiping through these rituals, this morning, one of the stories that I shared not only on my Telegram channel, which is the Armored Sheep. Thanks, by the way, to everyone who's been watching the Armored Sheep and commenting and letting me know.
Oh, yes.
That really means a lot to me. Really makes my heart happy. But square pegs unite.
Amen.
But there's an archaeological dig taking place at what is believed to be Avel Beit Ma'akah. And you see a reference to that location in the Bible. It's way north in Israel. And the discovery of a head that the archaeologists believe had a body. And it could be that the head broke off, or it could be that it was put on various bodies. Don't know. But the head, it's really interesting. This probably ritualistic artifact, a teraphim of some kind, or a terapha, probably is the singular, or tarif.
Tarif, yeah.
That it has almost Egyptian-looking lines to it's got black hair.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And has a hood of some kind on. And the hood has various colors. So this was probably mass-produced in a mold and then painted.
Yeah, it could be. In fact, I can put a little picture of this with the show notes so that people can see it. It's a famous discovery that's found because it's really remarkable. But this was from the biblical period, so this is not prehistoric or anything like that. No, I don't know if it's Egyptian, because the hair is.
I'm not saying it's Egyptian, but that's the quickest way that I can describe what it looks like.
Sure.
Yes.
Dated to the 9th century BC, which would be roughly the time of Ahab and Jezebel. Yeah.
Yep.
We were at Avel Beth Ma'akah. We didn't go up the tell because it's a pretty big hill, but we were at the base of it, and we took some video that will be in the forthcoming video, which has been forthcoming for a while now.
I know that we have actually asked a friend to take care of this, and the friend has just had a new baby.
No, this is the different one. This is not the one that he's working on, because he's working on the Solidarity mission. This is the Valley of the Shadow of Death video.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, maybe while you're recovering, honey, and you don't have anything to do.
Anyway, the site, as you say, was one of the northernmost spots in ancient Israel. It was roughly on the border, but yeah, it shows up at a key point in the time of David, 11th century BC or 10th century BC, where he was chasing down or sent Yoav, his general, his commander-in-chief, to chase down a rebel who had fled from him and fled to this city. And a woman said, "Are you going to destroy a city who is a mother in Israel?" And they throw the rebel, whose name I forget, down from the walls. And Yoav, in the Bible, looks like Joab.
Yeah.
It's the same name as Job, the patriarch, but it's the same name as Yoav Gallant, the current defense minister of Israel. That's the name, Yoav. Joab, Yoav is how you pronounce it.
Yoav spells his phonetically, Yoav.
Yeah, or at least that's how it's anglicized. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a very interesting site, but that discovery, that little head, if that was one of the teraphim, could be the representation of one of the kings.
Well, that's what the article seemed to think, that it was one of the kings, but also if you read down in the article, you'll see that other opinions are that it's actually part of a ritualistic statue.
Okay, yeah.
And it could actually be a king and used as a ritualistic statue.
But your description of Egyptian, I'm looking at this from the Armstrong Institute of Biblical Archaeology, so named for Herbert W. Armstrong, whose Worldwide Church of God had some theological issues. But they loved archaeology. But they're archaeology stuff, and they've got a current magazine out archaeology magazine that they make available. You can download the PDFs for free, which is real nice because their articles are well researched. But they, in the article about this head, says that the long hairdo, beard, and skin color fits the classic Egyptian depiction of peoples from the Near East. This is how they depicted what they called the sand dwellers.
Which may mean that it was actually part of a trade.
Could
that
be,
there were Egyptians who came to the area and they made these and sold them and they figured that's what they looked like. I don't know. But yeah, I think I love archaeology. And speaking of archaeology, before we forget, the Spring Israel tour has been rescheduled for October of next year. The exact dates are still being determined. It depends partly on, we want to make sure we're past the high holy days, but also want to make sure it's a date when all of the leaders can go. Derek and I, we've picked out dates. We can go. Well, the rest of you, if you can't go, well, too bad. No, we're going to try to accommodate everybody.
Right. So likely after the high holy days in Israel next October, but we'll have firm dates as soon as we can confirm those with Lipkin Tours. Yeah,
it was getting to that point ahead of the spring dates that if you didn't have your airlines, especially domestic airlines going to New York, already done, you needed to book those. And Brenda, who works with Lipkin Tours, had sent out an email. We saw that and thought, we need to make a decision here. And then Etty sent us an email and said, are you going to change your dates?
Yeah. And looking at the number of people who'd signed up, it was clear that the ongoing conflict was keeping people from signing up, which we understand because things are still pretty kinetic there. Even though Yoav Gallant said this past week that Hezbollah's supply of rockets and missiles is down to about 20% of what it was pre-war, but they're still lobbing dozens of them into Israel on a daily basis.
And the IDF has taken, and the ground forces have taken out quite a number of, I should say the IAF and the ground forces have taken out some of the rocket launchers. So those are more expensive to replace. I just lob, diseased cattle at us or something. But it was in particular one that had been launching rockets at Haifa, and that had been going on for a long time. However,
in fact, as we're recording this, the coast between the border and Haifa.
I know. It clearly there are other launchers out there. Also going on in Israel at this time is that the United States has told the administration of Israel that Iran plans to have yet another try sometime in the next 48 hours. Well, this was 24 hours ago that came out. Right.
This reportedly, New York Times reported this on Thursday, that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei made that decision this past Monday after getting reports on how much damage the Israeli airstrike actually inflicted. The Iranians didn't let on at first as to how much damage the Israelis caused. Apparently, it was a lot more extensive than what they'd let on. They really degraded Iran's air defenses, or anti-aircraft defenses, let me put it that way, so that the S-300 missile launchers that the Russians had provided, anti-aircraft missiles, apparently pretty much destroyed, a major port seriously damaged. So Iran is now reportedly looking at a pretty severe strike. And Aaron Lipkin reported that it would be within 48 hours. Now, I don't know what his sources are. He's doing.
He has very good sources.
Yeah.
We can't tell you everything that he does, but he's on the inside.
Yeah. He's got access to sources that we don't.
Mm-hmm.
So he was relaying foreign sources that we don't have access to. So we're praying for the peace of Jerusalem today, especially because
absolutely.
And again, as we're looking at this, the So Far app that I've got, which is that
TZOFAR,
right, sounds an alert every time a red alert, which is a missile, rocket, aircraft alert, goes off.
Sounds like chauffeur, doesn't it?
It does. That's what it is. Yeah. They just spell it differently.
Don't they know?
Again, the whole coast between Haifa up to the Lebanese border is under red alert as we're recording this about 9:30 a.m. Central Time here in the U.S., but other sites in the Central Galilee areas in the north, like Kiryat Shimona, again, is under a red alert. Central Galilee, Upper Galilee. So within the last 3 hours, there have been literally dozens of red alerts for communities between the Mediterranean coast and the Central and Upper Galilee.
What do you say we take a break, and when we come back, we can talk more about what's going on in the Middle East, in particular, why Khomeini might be choosing to do this now.
Sounds like a plan, and also just a few words about the upcoming election.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's ahead on PID Radio. One of the best ways to learn spiritual warfare is through fiction, and we've got a special offer during the month of November at the Gilbert House store.
I'm very thankful for that.
Thanksgiving. I see what you did.
And it is the first 2 books of the Laodicea Chronicles, along with book 2.5, perhaps, The God Conspiracy, because in that, Derek uses some of my characters.
So the first 2 books of the Laodicea Chronicles, Sharon's first novel, Winds of Evil, and a book that suddenly became a lot more relevant in the last few years, The Armageddon Strain.
It's very relevant. H5N1 is right in there.
Mm-hmm. And The God Conspiracy builds on The Armageddon Strain. You'll find some of the characters shared back and forth. But the bottom line is this. We face principalities and powers. We write about those in these novels, and you get all 3 books plus the Best of Sci Friday Volume 2 for just $45. This is more than $80 value, just $45 plus shipping and handling right now at gilberthouse.org/store. Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and of course we're in this wonderful barn that many of you helped build, many of you, because you helped financially, but you also prayed for this barn. And I know you continue to do that. We really appreciate your prayers and your support. Again, we just said we're going to have to change the dates for Israel's tour for next year, but you can go to gilberthouse.org/travel and get all of the information there. All of it. We're just trying to keep. Derek's going in there right now. Did I update?
Just confirming that I got the dates right. Travel with the Gilberts. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Please note new dates due to the war. Yes, okay.
There you go. Also, while you're at gilberthouse.org, go to /store, and you'll see that we've got specials every month. The November special is 3 novels, Armageddon Strain, Winds of Evil, and The God Conspiracy, plus a Sci Friday DVD for free.
Actually, it's a 2 DVD set.
It's crazy talk.
Yeah.
Crazy talk. It is an $85 value, but you only pay $45. So
plus
$40 off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shipping and handling, we do have to charge. Sorry about that, but we don't get to do any of this for free. We've got supplies we have to buy. We have to pay for our software, which is not cheap. So, but because you guys are so good, we are coming out ahead.
Yeah,
thank you.
And we truly appreciate that. Also, again, our new book, the Gates of Hell. I was having this cycle through the file cabinet in my brain.
Oh, no.
Oh, there it is. The Gates of Hell is available, and whenever
like
you order a book,
going through.
yes, filing cabinet, it's all on fire. We sign all the books when we send them out. So if that, if you appreciate that, that's fine.
And if they're gifts, all we do is sign our names. Yeah. Seriously, it's just God bless name and maybe a Bible verse. But we don't say to so-and-so. So if you're buying this as a gift for someone, which is a great idea this time of year, buy 2. And the brand new book, Destination Earth, is now in the library, now in the store. Be adding that to the store today. That just arrived in the warehouse yesterday. This is a book on the
The UFO UAP phenomenon, co-authored with Allie Anderson and Donna Howell.
Oh, wonderful. I watched I only watched part of it because, frankly, I got really bored after about 1.5 episodes. It's a Netflix documentary series that is about a New York abduction event.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not it seems to be tracking that they're going to debunk it by the end. But I talked with Vicki Joy Anderson. I sent her a note and I asked her if she'd seen it. And I said, it looks to me like they're going to debunk it. And I said, this really bothers me. And she said, it really bothers her too, because there are true experiencers. And if you are of the mindset that this can only fit my paradigm, that these are aliens from other planets, and that is it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they present as aliens from other planets, but this is really a demonic attack. And it takes a lot of different forms. And people genuinely are terrified, especially kids.
Mm-hmm.
Kids see things that look like ghosts or spirits or hat men, or, they take a lot of different shadowy shapes in their bedrooms. And this is Vicki Joy Anderson's, this is her ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I sent her a note. So support her. We've got her book in our store.
Yeah, They Only Come Out at Night.
Which
Mm-hmm.
is
highly recommended.
If you have kids or grandkids, especially kids that are starting to say things like, there's this monster in my room at night or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
be ready to give them the answers.
Right. Yeah, or if this is something that you've dealt with, because this afflicts adults too.
Yep. And Vicki, she works with experiencers, people who are victims of this.
Mm-hmm.
Experiencers is the sort of, the alien abduction crowd. They call it that, but I think you're victims.
Yeah.
You're assault victims from the fallen realm.
Exactly. And the documentary, I've not watched it yet. I plan to, because I think this will be relevant for the discussion, because on Monday we're going to film
Mm-hmm.
programs about Destination Earth. And it seems that they do what skeptics often do. They pick really outrageous, easily debunked claims, and then use that to claim that anyone who experiences anything like that is similarly delusional, ill, whatever. We see that. We saw that with the reactions to the experimental serum in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
If you raised any questions at all, valid questions about the lack of research behind it, you were suddenly lumped in with the wildest conspiracy theorists.
Yep.
That were easily debunked.
So if you've seen the series, or if you're just curious about it, you can have this conversation on our app. Download the app and go into the conversation area. But we promised before the break that we were going to talk about Israel, and this gets into what you were just saying, that there are certain topics you're not allowed to discuss on social media.
Mm-hmm.
You're not allowed to, you and I can't say certain things on various platforms. That's why we like to have, if we have to edit something more than just maybe saying, okay, we won't say this word, Judd Burton's recent talk, for instance, we put the whole thing on the app and the edited version is on the different platforms. But in Mauritius, there was a censoring of all social media during the election, because social media is dangerous to them. Well, we still, in the United States, we're coming up on election on Tuesday. Please go vote.
Mauritius, by the way, is not voting until November 11th, and they're shut it down as of this past Friday. So
I know.
It's like a 2-week ban going up to their election.
Yes, I know. And the reason I bring this up is because one of the stories, and I highly recommend, if you don't follow me on X, please do, because it's a great, I know people don't either love it or hate it, but you're free to say whatever you want to, which is why some people hate it. It's like they don't like what other people say. Well, that's called free speech.
Yeah.
There is a story that I shared on X, but I also shared it on my Telegram account, The Armored Sheep, and my Telegram channel, I should say, that we can put a link to our Telegram channel.
It's in the notes every week.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. That this story is about a company that began as an awning and construction company many decades ago, and has now become what they call a reconstruction company. In other words, if there's a natural disaster, Belfor, Belfor, Belfor will come in and they will help the locals to clean up and to, recover and get back to what it was before the hurricane or the tornado or the flood or whatever happened. They were interviewed for Fortune magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And the story about Belfor is that they are ready in case there's a certain kinetic action that takes place among people who disagree post-election.
It's interesting.
I won't say the words, but remember Lincoln and when he was in president and he had to deal with a certain kinetic action between the North and the South. Well, that's the phrase.
That's the word.
They're ready for that.
So they're suspecting that this may be something that actually happens if elections don't go the right way.
And in the article, it says that this is a company that's always ready for whatever comes, that they were ready prior to 2020 for what happened then, and people just thought they were crazy for stocking up on all of those masks and things.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that this particular disagreement amongst brothers with, very very kinetic action, that it, how do I put this? There was another story that I shared this morning that I told you about this morning, Derek, that a survey
Mm-hmm.
says that I think it was 60% of those surveyed said that, oh yeah, they know somebody, if things don't go their way, they're ready and they're going to get kinetic.
And these would be people who, they're afraid people who are supporting Donald
prejudice.
Trump would
that's exactly what they're saying. If Trump doesn't win, it will go in this direction. Well, I don't agree with that. And I wonder how many people answered, yes, I know someone, actually heard or think they know someone. They're making a judgment that maybe some guy that lives down the road or some gal that lives down the road. Look, we live in a very conservative part of the United States. In fact, we're in a state that requires a photo ID.
What?
We're one of the blue states on that photo ID map.
Even here in rural America, where we can't get to a Kinko's to make copies to get that idea. That's what Vice President Harris said.
I know.
Oh, we figured out how to do it even without Kinko's.
Guess what? It's called our voter ID card and our driver's license.
Yeah.
Crazy idea, isn't it?
I know.
And you don't have to make a copy of anything. You just show it to them. They scan it, and then you get to go vote.
When politicians, and I'm not going to just throw her under the bus here, because we've seen other examples too, like when George H.W. Bush went to a grocery store and was stunned at the scanner.
The price of milk.
Well, no. What? You mean you just scan it over that device and it?
I've forgotten about that.
Yeah, I mean this has been ongoing for decades now. You're used to it. They don't have to punch in the totals anymore. They just scanned it, and he was like, "What? What's that?"
Can you imagine Prince Harry?
Oh no,
No.
Anyway, when politicians say something like that, it's just a reminder that they live in a completely different world and have no clue how most of us live.
That is very true. And depending upon your politics, you may, and I'll put myself in this. I may not totally understand someone who is raised in that environment where they're in a bubble and they never have to worry for the next dollar because they inherited all their money or whatever. I don't relate to that any more than that person relates to me. And to the other extreme, I have trouble relating to someone who is living on the street because I've never had to.
Right.
And if you see someone who's living on the street, that doesn't mean that person is bad. Oftentimes, many of us are living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And if you miss a paycheck, suddenly you're out of your
It just takes one unexpected disaster to throw you out. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it is become more and more obvious in recent years of there is a tendency among the political left, people who are ideologically liberal. They'll use the term progressive. It's actually regressive, wanting to return us to the neo-pagan or to a pagan existence that existed prior to the arrival of Jesus on this planet, that they project onto others what they themselves are doing. And I don't know if this is because they're afraid that we've thought of the same things that they have, and are going to do it before they can get to it. You know, the sort of the twisted golden rule: do unto others and do it first before they can do it to you. But I think it would be more likely for a repeat of what we saw on January 21st of 2017, when Trump won and suddenly cars were being set on fire in Washington, D.C.
I think that may well be what happens.
The iron law of projection. They're going to accuse you of what they are doing.
May I just suggest that rather than government shutting down social media, that government encourage prayer on social media.
Yeah.
Scripture on social media.
Yeah.
That we bombard the Lord, that we petition the throne over and over and over again for peaceful election.
Peaceful transition of power, right? And it's sad because since 2017, the last 8 years, it has now become sort of normal when we look at, I mean, I don't remember until 2017. Now, of course, I was a little young to remember the civil unrest of the 1960s.
I remember.
Yeah. But, and even a little young to remember some of the terrorist bombings that took place in the 70s. Those have sort of faded from the collective memory too. But yeah, there were terrorist bombings taking place here in the U.S. back in the 70s. But Washington, D.C., this was a report in several corporate news outlets yesterday. There are buildings, government buildings and retail outlets, stores that are boarding up their windows in Washington, D.C. because they're afraid. I mean, they're preparing like people in Miami or the Gulf Coast of Texas would prepare for a hurricane. They're boarding up all their windows because they're afraid if the election goes a certain way that things will get really kinetic. And I would suggest it's not, it won't be that way if Harris is declared the winner. I think it'll be the other way around. Well,
spiritually speaking, there may be several spirits on the fallen side that are trying to sit on that throne, if you want to put it that way, the throne of Washington, D.C., which you and I have written, especially you, written about how that throne is essentially a storm god throne.
Yeah.
And it's already got an occupant.
United States Capitol, named for the Temple of Jupiter in Rome, and Jupiter, Zeus, Baal, identified by Jesus as Satan.
Yep. So I would love to think that our country is 100% for the Lord, for Christ, but sadly we are not. But please pray as we go into this. And since we are talking about election, Derek and I are going to be doing live election coverage on Tuesday evening.
Yeah. Actually, we'll be down at Morningside with the team from the Jim Baker Show, Ricky Baker, Mondo de la Vega, and
a number of people are going to be Skyping in. You and I are going to be there. Zach Drew is either going to Skype in or he's going to be there. I didn't.
Well, I hope he's there. We haven't seen him in a long time.
Me too. I love Zach Drew. He's lost a lot of weight.
Yes, he's getting healthy.
I know.
God bless him. That's a wise thing to do.
It isn't, I want to lose weight to look, cool. No, you want to get healthy.
I watch his program.
Your body will have its favorite weight.
Yeah, yeah.
And it may not be the one you think is cool to have. You may think you want to have more muscle. You want to have, a skinnier waist or whatever. Your body has its perfect weight. Help your body to find that by eating high-value nutrition food.
Right. If you're going to have carbs, and your body needs carbs.
Yes, you do.
You cannot maintain an Atkins diet, just all protein for very long.
Yeah, you can't. A no-carb diet.
No-carb diet just does, yeah. But make sure they're complex carbs and not simple carbs. Don't load up on chips and stuff. So anyway, yeah. But I watched Zach's program.
I ate some on my birthday, though.
Well, that's okay. Birthday carbs don't count.
Birthday cake.
Yep. And he made it clear that the reason Zach is losing weight is to be healthy for his kids, and that is the right motivation.
He's got the cutest little kids.
He does. So speaking of politics and the election, I see that in the UK, the Labour government has brought forth its
government in name only.
Yeah, brought forth its new budget.
Oh my goodness!
The new chancellor there, the chancellor of the Exchequer, first woman to hold the position in 900 years of that office. she dropped a bomb that really surprised a lot of people.
It's caused the market to just tanks coming. I mean, the value at the FTSE, I think, the FTSE. I think that's sort of Wall Street. Yeah. It's really starting to crash, and there are some value of individual stocks that are starting to go south. It's being called the new, the gal that held Liz Truss. Mm-hmm. It's called her mini budget. Remember that?
Yes. When she and Kwame Kwarteng brought forth the mini budget.
I honestly don't think it was that budget. I think it was just decided that she needed to get out. They didn't like her. They being whoever was in charge. Right. And therefore the Bank of England said, we're going to re-steer this ship.
Yeah. The new government there is, they're calling for taxes being raised by over $50 billion US. That's about 40 billion pounds.
And Keir Starmer is saying to the already overworked NHS staff, you're going to have to work more hours. We're going to ask more of you. Over the last 2 years, there have been a lot of protests and work walkouts from the various branches, various peoples within the NHS, the junior doctors, the senior doctors, the nurses, you can name it, and porters, whatever. And they've been striking. So for him to say, Sir Keir, who is steering you? Is his name Lorelli?
Question.
Thinking it might be.
What's interesting, though, is that the media is saying, this is a huge tax increase, but, Brits would say rise. Starmer promised they wouldn't need to raise any more than they said 8 billion pounds is what they were looking at. And about $12 billion US. And instead, it's 5 times that is what they brought forward.
Yep. You'll notice that he's changed the way he dresses. He used to wear, very stylish glasses, and he would have very nice, suits that were bespoke suits, and now he's wearing black T-shirts and a black, blazer and black, trousers or something.
Trying to look
black
more,
trainers. I don't know what he's trying to look like, but it doesn't improve his look to me. He looked more powerful the other way. This way, he just looks like he's getting ready to go sing rock and roll somewhere.
Sort of
diminishes him.
Robert Palmer look.
Sort of, but I don't think he's going to be PM for long. I think that there will be a reshuffle.
Yeah.
And he'll be shuffled out.
That may well be.
And I hope it's not Angela Rayner, because honestly, she's not a lot better.
Angela Rayner is scary.
Yeah, she is.
She just looks like she's out for. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see that Kemi Badenoch is running for the first minister in Scotland?
Yeah. That should be really interesting.
I think that I've always liked her.
Rachel Reeves. That's the name of the chancellor. I was trying to remember her name.
I can picture her.
Yeah. First labor budget in 14 years, but the first one to be delivered by a woman. But 40 billion pounds, $50 billion US. The first poll from of Britons reacting to this new budget, only 20% believe it will leave the country better off. Huge tax increase.
Penny Mordaunt is going to run for mayor of London, which, please, London, please elect her or elect someone who is more conservative.
Oh, my goodness.
London's businesses, London's shops are closing because there's nobody who can get in. You have to have an electric vehicle to get into most of them.
Right.
And that includes the buses and the cabs.
But also delivery trucks. I mean, delivery trucks can get in there, but you got to pay more.
They have to pay.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
It's like £12 a day.
Yeah, and the bottom line is these costs are always passed along to consumers. Okay, it cost us more to bring our, materials in, our food for our restaurant or whatever, the books for our bookstore, whatever. Those cost increases are always passed along to consumers.
Exactly. So they can't afford them.
Right. So when a labor government and labor sent a bunch of workers over to campaign for Kamala Harris.
Yep.
How is this not election interference?
It is.
Yeah, but the media is not reporting on it mostly.
Well, you and I have been.
We've been, but, and I've mentioned it on 5 and 10, but the corporate media says, it's okay. It's not, they're just knocking on doors. It's no big deal. That's more direct intervention than the Russians ever did that got Trump.
That's election
in so
interference.
Much trouble.
Exactly.
It is. Look, they want a liberal, high tax, high spend government here in the U.S. to back their play Starmer and Labour government wants to reintegrate the UK into the European Union.
Well,
while the rest of the EU is falling apart.
Another aspect of interference in doing things you're not supposed to be legally allowed to do, and that is Prince Harry, whom I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. I tend to follow what he does because I just don't know what's going on with Harry. But Prince Harry, if you're not following any of that, he left the royal family, supposedly, and he gave a speech to NATO's military committee, which seems redundant because NATO's military. But he gave a speech to them. Now, in the image, the screen cap I saw of the video, the few people that are sitting, listening, quote unquote, to him, look like they're either talking to one another or asleep. Mm-hmm. Harry is not the most energizing speaker in the world, but
no, he's
part of the royal family. They're supposed to be. It's a constitutional monarchy. He's still in the line of succession, which mm-hmm. means that he's supposed to stay Sturm. He's not allowed to make any comments about geopolitics.
Mm-hmm.
So why is he addressing NATO?
That's a really, really good question.
He's also on the Aspen Institute board, which likes to interfere with elections
mm-hmm.
and take away our free will.
Well, again, it's okay when... If you're politically left, that's fine. That's okay. If you're politically conservative, well, then they'll drop the F word. And
I've once again been watching and reading about the Cambridge Five because eventually that's going to be in the Red Wing saga. But the sympathetic portrayals of these traitors
mm-hmm.
Is that, and you have one conversation where one of the individuals says, "Look, most of the world is asleep here in Europe. Most in Europe are asleep. Most of our government are asleep. And we see fascism on the rise." Mm-hmm. This is in the 1930s. Fascism on the rise in Germany. And we see communism that's at the time was not even 20 years old
mm-hmm.
in Russia. And Russia's the only thing standing up against Hitler. That's what the character actually said. So the only way to stop Hitler is to be a communist.
Mm-hmm.
That's why many people espoused communism back in the day. They believed that they were doing a good thing. There were a lot of communists used by Hitler
mm-hmm.
to bring him to power, and then he moved them off to camps. This idea that you either are far left or far right, and there's no middle ground that has any political value,
mm-hmm.
that is mistaken. If you look at a bell curve, the two extremes are rare. Most people fall in the middle, and we're not asleep.
Right.
We simply are libertarians. We want free speech. We want free will.
Yeah.
We want a choice of a middle ground.
Yeah.
And the implication in that film in particular was that there is no middle ground. Anything in the middle is asleep.
Yeah. No, that's a lie.
That is a lie.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of lying going on.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, election cycle, we see a lot of that. One of the things I liked about cutting the cable years ago and just going with all streaming services is that we got away from political ads. But now, since we have a number of YouTube channels we found that we like, we're getting bombarded with political ads on YouTube. And a lot of them are just flat out lying.
Misinformation, disinformation,
yep.
all over the place.
Here in Missouri, we're getting hit with and this is something I will say. Proposition 3, Proposition 2. Those are the two that have got the most money behind them. Proposition 2 is to legalize sports betting.
7 of them.
There's 7 of them. Yeah. 2 is sports betting, legalizing sports betting here, and they're promising it'll raise $100 million for schools. Like, wait a minute,
that's based on a tax.
Yeah.
That you'll get from them, but there are all these deductions, so they don't pay any tax.
Right. Yeah. It's the same kind of thing. It's like, well, we got all these expenses and this and that and the other. Oh, we only made $1,000 profit for the whole year. So
here's your dollar.
Here's your dollar. So that's a lie.
So instead of,
the lottery was supposed to pay for our schools. The casino boats were supposed to pay for our schools.
Take the money you would go gamble and give it to a school.
Send it to your local school district. Or, hey, how about this? Fund a homeschooling co-op. How about that?
Trump says he's going to give $10,000 tax break to homeschoolers.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
That's a reason to vote for him right there.
Amen.
Get your kids out of the propagandized schools. There's a really good report by Abigail Schreier, who's an investigative journalist and an author. She was the one 4 years ago who broke the story about how kids were being abused in schools and pushed into the gender industrial complex.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's got a new article out on her Substack called The Kindervater, showing how teachers' unions are conspiring to teach, to show teachers how they can teach kindergartners and first graders that Israel is bad, that Israel is the oppressor, they're the colonizers, they're oppressing the poor Palestinian Arabs. And this is really, that is wicked. Yeah, that is really wicked. Is.
We're going to need to go soon if we're going to answer a question because you have to take Grace to get her brand new medal today.
Oh, yay. Yes, that very thing, the annual thing. One other quick thing I just want to toss out there in case people hadn't heard about this. You can find the story online. This is circling back to our discussion earlier of demonic oppression and possession. Tucker Carlson was interviewed. He's going to be featured in a forthcoming documentary. Director is a guy named Scooter Downey, who's done some other documentaries that are really cutting edge. And he talked in this video interview about how he was attacked by a demon in his bed and left with blood. Yeah, left with bloody scratches on both sides. This, he says, happened about 18 months ago. And he still has the marks on his, they're still visible. So, of course, he's now being pilloried by skeptics, just as you were when you made your comments, was about 3 years ago now.
Went viral,
yeah. I mean, the Red Tops in the UK had a lot of fun with it.
Oh, I know.
So Carlson is in the same boat now. And I think when things like this happen and people talk about it out loud, especially if you're a prominent person or if you got any kind of a media forum, there are those on the left who'll say, look at this, Rube, this. Yeah. And this is why people who are suffering from this sort of thing don't like to talk about it.
They're terrified.
Because they're afraid, I'll lose my family member, I'll lose my friends.
Yep.
They may call child services to protect my children.
Well, you can talk about it on our app. We are here to listen.
And again, Vicki Joy Anderson's book, They Only Come Out at Night.
Yes.
So anyway, but the fact that Tucker Carlson was willing to say this publicly, I pray opens the doors for others to say, hey, this is a real thing. We are living in the natural world, but this is just a subset of reality.
Yeah, we can only see the natural world, but there is a supernatural world all around us.
Yeah. Well, questions. Got a couple here. One from Wendy, who's asking, Sharon, do you have an autobiography? You're an excellent writer and teacher, just wondering.
Oh, boy, if I only had time. I started one years ago. And in fact, I found it when I was going through my files recently. And I thought, well, that was a good start, but maybe one day.
Brad,
thank you for asking.
Brad asks, hi, Derek. After the Lord ascended into heaven, there was a 10-day gap before the Holy Spirit indwelt believers. This, what do they call it? Pentecost, 50 days after.
Yeah, he ascended on day 40.
Right. So 10-day gap. And the church age began. In the near future, the church will ascend into heaven. There will be a gap of time before the Lord descends on the earth. Does the 10-day gap possibly correspond to a 10-year gap between the rapture and second coming?
I think that's a great question. In fact, isn't there a 10-day addition when you look at blessed are those who are here, and it's like a 10-day difference in the 3,260 days or whatever it is. The 7-year period in days, and it's an additional, I think, about 10 days.
In the book of Daniel, the 2,560 days.
Blessed are those who live to, I'll have to go back and forgive me. I don't have it in front of me, and I know the dogs are inside in their crate, and I keep thinking for the last 5 minutes, I've got to go let the dogs out.
Yeah. Honestly, Brad, don't know the answer to that question. It's a really good observation, a good question. We'll have to address this on Unraveling Revelation.
I think we will. And Unraveling Revelation, anything that we produce, including 5 and 10. Now, 5 and 10 will probably start up sooner than, we start up our things. But GHTV, Gilbert House Productions, the podcasts, and I don't know if you're going to do with your VFTV, we'll be putting up the best of.
Yeah, classic stuff.
Best of, to get Derek through the full recovery period. And I would like to see him go right through the holidays. I'm trying to be mama bear for him, and I'm trying to clear the decks so he can really relax.
Well, we've got some classic stuff from back going almost 20 years back, so we could certainly pull some great stuff out of the archives and just serve that up. So if you subscribe to the podcast, wherever that is, it's Apple Podcast, YouTube Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, wherever fine podcasts are sold. You'll still get new content once a week, but it will be new old content. Maybe something you've not heard before.
Especially from the vault.
Especially if you've not heard. If you're a recent discoverer of this podcast.
Or if you just want to listen to some of the classic stuff,
Sure.
like David Flynn, Tom Horn.
Oh, yeah.
Russ Dizdar. I mean, many
lot of great old stuff. So we will have a Gilbert House Fellowship tomorrow morning, and we will address another question there. Got a good one about archaeology.
Oh, I love that. Well, tomorrow morning.
Yep. And that'll be, of course, at gilberthouse.org, or again, wherever fine podcasts are sold. And it flipped over the, if you're subscribing on YouTube to the audio only version or Gilbert House Fellowship on YouTube, we were having YouTube just pull the files directly in from the podcast host, the audio, and YouTube cut that off. They don't do that anymore. So now it's pulling it from the art. So if you're going through your podcast feed, you're noticing there's duplicate entries in there. It's just because I don't want to have to go back and delete stuff. So anyway.
So pray for Derek, because Derek does. You really do take all of this very seriously, and you work a lot of hours. A lot of hours. Yep. So it's why I'm trying to be mama bear. So please pray for Derek.
Yep. Not sure what I'm going to do. Probably just sit down in front of the camera tonight for tomorrow's View from the Bunker. Maybe just some comments and observations on the upcoming election, because I was talking about elections and election tampering back in 2006.
That sounds good.
Yeah, but we'll have to kind of dance around that, because the last time I did that, YouTube 3 years later went back and pulled and it just deleted that.
Look, you'll figure something out, but I got dogs to take care of.
Yep.
You got a dog to take care of.
Yep.
And we know you guys are so good to us. Thank you.
Amen. Until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and for Grace and Glory, who are in the crate, and I'm going to go let them out. Let the dogs out. Whoa. Thank you. We love you. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @PID Radio, or the PID Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.